What's up, YouTube?
What's up?
We are here with Bart and Brad.
The other two trail trash guys.
We're going to talk about LS swapping your Jeeps.
Or really anything.
Or whatever, yeah.
We know more about the Jeeps LS swaps than we know anything at this point.
So we're going to kick this off by just telling you guys what rigs we have, what engine's in it, transmission, transfer case, like the real basic rundown. Yeah. So we'll just let Brad start with that.
Yeah.
Go for it, Brad.
So basically, I just have like it's a 96 XJ with a Gen 3 5.3 out of a Silverado. It does have an aftermarket cam in it from Brian Tooley. Basic truck cam, stage 2. Has an LS6 intake manifold on it. So that's a car manifold. It's a lot more lower profile than the truck manifolds. Helps it fit underneath the hood of an XJ.
And also robs you of all your torque.
Oh yeah, all the torque is just murdered. From that has Novak engine mounts made for an XJ. Speed engineering headers made for an S10. Then from there on out, Turbo 400, Rubicon 241 transfer case, and then Adams drive shafts to the ground. Pretty cut and dry. The 400 has a few things done to it. It's built by a guy in West Tennessee. His name's Tim Combs. He builds a lot of race car transmissions with manual body. Novak also did the output shaft and adapter to run a Rubicon transfer case with it. And about a 2600 stall torque converter by FTI. And that's basically it. Cut and dry LS XJ swap.
All right.
Now we get to Bart, which is kind of unheard of, really. I don't know if anybody else is running a LS swap in a Grand. Tell us about yours.
Well, it's the 96 Grand Cherokee ZJ. There isn't much information out there in the interworlds that put 5.3 swaps or LS swaps in that particular Jeep. So it is a Gen 3 5.3. Unlike Bradley, I stuck with the truck intake because I didn't want to lose all my low-end torque. That did take quite a bit of shaving to do. And of course, mine's not as pretty as some of those shaved ones you see on the internet. I'm running the TJ Swap center dump headers, and the mounts are 100% custom. There's nothing out there, so if you're going to do it in a ZJ, you got to brush it up on some fab work. And that's got TH400, built by the same guy, Tim Combs, reverse manual valve body. Adams drive shafts. I'm still running a 231 transfer case. I did upgrade to the 6-pinion planetary out of a GM transfer case. Other than that, well, a 2200 stall converter. Brad, what'd I get? I forgot.
I can't remember now. It was from
All
it was a small company that made them. But it looked like it was a really good converter, decently priced. It wasn't the cheapest, and it's not like a custom converter either. But
right, it's a mid-range converter. As far as price-wise, it's mid-range. It's nothing fancy, nothing cheap. And also that's I guess that's really it. Oh, Novak, I did the same Novak on the transmission to go to the 231 as well, like Bradley did.
All right. Well, I guess we'll let Casey go next.
Do I go next?
Yeah, I think you should go next because when it comes to engine stuff, I have the most extensively modified.
Well.
Oh, my bad. I'm running a stage 3 Brian Tooley racing cam.
Oh, yeah.
So he gets it.
Yeah. Another torque killer.
Yeah.
You got the truck intake, so it balances out.
Hey. Yeah, but that also, if you look at the numbers on the stage 3 truck cam versus the stock numbers, it's still higher.
but not as high as it could be. Anyway, moving on.
Where do I start? Mine is pretty much a hand-me-down type of Frankenstein. I've got a 87 Comanche LQ460. I'm running a LS6 car intake, 60 over fast injectors with a Brian to the stage 3 cam, TH400 with a factory stall converter
Built by GM. In 1980 something.
I'm running a 203, 205 doubler transfer case setup. Rear Tom Woods drive shaft. Front drive shaft is donated from Todd Salisbury from Guaranteed Seamless Gutters. Throw it out there. And other than that, it's pretty much run-of-the-mill LQ4. I don't think I missed anything.
No. So, I have what started life as, the Jeep is a 96 Cherokee 4-door. The engine started life as a 5.3, just junkyard engine out of a Tahoe. Put that in there after going through the whole engine, spun a rod bearing, wiped out a couple rods, the crank, so it ended up getting a complete LS1 rotating assembly. So now it's an iron block 5.7 with ported and polished 862 heads, an LS6 intake, stock LS6 injectors and throttle body, a turbo 400 built by the same person that built Dwight's transmissions for him, Georgia Performance Transmissions. After seeing the abuse that Dwight's transmission has taken, I didn't doubt what this guy was capable of doing. So
I did like how you did say Dwight's transmissions. There's multiple.
Yeah, he's on number 3 now, but I mean, they've all done him very well. Still running a 231 with the 6-pinion planetary, the wide chain. I also have Novak adapter, and Tom Woods drive shafts. Rear drive shaft.
Rear drive shaft.
Stock Jeep front.
No, it's not stock.
Oh, that's true. No, we cut that.
No,
Yeah,
no.
never mind.
I've built that thing about 3 times now.
Length changes. Yeah, so that's basically the gist of what we got going on.
Yeah, we've all got different platforms. The LS swaps run of the mill, so to say, but we've all done things different. About everything is done different.
I think we're all probably running a winter shifter, are we not?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah,
We didn't even discuss that.
Yeah, we're all running winter shifters.
yeah.
And that's because I guess I don't know if y'all researched it. I didn't, but I don't know of any other company that's making a shifter that design where it also fits a reverse manual valve body for something like that. But
B&M does. Todd was telling us about his, but God, I think he said he paid about $500 something for his, and I like it, but
It's a
it's a
lever type release.
yeah, like a pistol grip style.
yeah, that's something else. If I guess if we didn't, I guess they need to know, because if they start researching reverse manual valve bodies and things like that, you got to have a different shifter for that. So
Yeah.
And for the people who don't know, a reverse manual valve body means that it's no longer an automatic transmission. You have to shift it through the gears. It stays in whatever gear you put it in until you move the shifter. And the reverse pattern puts your shift pattern is part reverse, neutral, first, second, third. A standard shift pattern is part reverse, neutral, third, second, first. And I, as far as I know, the only real reason that people do reverse manual valve bodies in off-road rigs is so that your first and reverse are close together.
You can get in the neutral faster.
Yeah, or reverse if you're trying to set it back on the tire.
And which, with the reverse manual valve body has been around for as long as these transmissions have been around. It come from hot rods, moved into the four-wheel drive scene, which is easier to to handle if you get into a tight spot and you're fast enough on the shifter to put your tires back down on the ground or keep you from rolling. If you've watched videos of rock mounds and stuff like that, you've seen that. But yeah, the shifter, yeah, that's definitely a must. That and they're not expensive at all.
No.
I think I get
No, they're very expensive.
yeah. I want
Wide open seems to be pretty much the place to go to get anything winters related, and I think you can get a shifter with cable, the bracket for your specific transmission for right around $260.
I was gonna say that's what I bought mine through Summit because we was down there. It was around that price. And another thing too is, if you don't like the gate that it come with, they sell different gates for the shifters.
Yep. Trim your gate to your style, however you like it. You can trim it because it is a gated where it, down, goes to the left for first gear or reverse or whatever. So if you wanted to trim it out to make it easier to go from one gear to another, you can. And then if you hate it, it's like a $13 gate plate and a little bit of time to swap it back in.
And what did you do, Brad, to mount your shifter? Did you?
What I did is I took a couple little pieces of flat 1/8" plate and cut them out to an angle, and I already had a fabricated console, so I just welded those two pieces of plate and sandwiched the shifter right there in the middle and went to the two bolts that say winter sidewinder on each side, and that's how the shifter's mounted in my console.
And did you run your cable through the tunnel where the parking brake cable was?
No, I ended up making another hole that made it a little bit easier to clear the drive shaft.
Okay.
Get it on more of the driver's side of the tunnel. Looking back now, I probably could have gone through the parking brake hole, but at the time, it just wasn't lining up. But I'm sure I could have made it work now.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of making holes in my body, so.
And Bart, you pretty much fabbed your whole console and made a bracket
Yeah,
for yours.
I kind of duplicated what Bradley did in a sense. Just built it out of 3/4 angle, basically just a long rectangle, and used aluminum to skin it. And very similar to him is when I was building mine is when I also went with that shifter. So I was able to build the braces underneath the aluminum skid to put basically the same angled tabs, and I bolted mine in on the same thing on the bolts for the winter's emblem. So that was able to pull it back closer towards my knee or my hip, so that when you're sitting in your seat strapped in, your hand's still right there, accessible to the shifter.
Yeah.
And I've got a grocery getter, so my hole for my parking brake was nowhere near lining up. So I did drill a hole to make mine go.
And what bracket system did you?
I have a go-built bracket that was just kind of a generic, I think the thing's built for like 2 buggies and stuff. But you can buy it with cup holders in the front of the shifter, or cup holders behind the shifter, or no cup holders. And I bought the one with the cup holders in front and was able to just trim out my center console. Well, I took the center console out, bolted this thing to the floorboard, and then was able to trim out the trim around where the parking brake was, and then stick the center console back in.
So you got the factory center console?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty cool because when you got it, we didn't know how this was going to go, and once everything was done, it's like really sweet.
And it's at a good position where if I'm propped up on the console, but as an armrest, the shifter's just right there. I kind of turned it just a little bit so that it kind of angles back towards me as I shift back, and mine was lined up perfect to go through the parking brake.
Well, I think I sent y'all pictures of it whenever I found it. In case anyone out there does a custom console with a flat lid on it and still want to retain some sort of compartment, Tractor Supply has a contractor's center console that fit perfect in between my seats. Except I turned it around backwards to where the cup holders are for the rear seat. It worked great.
Yeah, that turned out super cool.
Yeah, I really like that. Being able to keep cup holders in the back seat's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I still have back seats, unlike you.
Yeah, I don't have any.
You ain't got to worry about that.
And it's funny too. as much, console and shifter talk that we have going on, but that is a big part of doing an LS swap. From what I've been able to tell, everybody that does this swap, they do something with a console to make the Sidewinder or B&M shifter work, whichever they go with.
Yeah.
You could probably make the stock Jeep shifter work. I don't know what you have to do to the cable, but
Yeah, I almost feel like you probably could. It might take some custom fab work or, a custom cable being made, and then I would think that the gates for the shifter be close, but you do have the problem with, oh, no, never mind. An AW4 shifter does do drive 3, 1, 2, so if you had a 3-speed transmission, it wouldn't be a big deal.
yeah.
And then I would assume if you did like a 4L60, 4L80, or another GM automatic, you could probably make that work, I would think, because GM, they did drive third 1, 2, didn't they?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because 1 and 2 are on the same spot on the shifter on a factory GM truck or car or whatever. I'm not sure if they are or not.
I don't know, like a 4L60 or
Yeah,
a 4L80, I don't know.
I'm not sure either.
I don't own any GM products that are that new.
Yeah.
And mine's too wore out to tell. All right, well, since we're on interiors, I guess what have we all done for instrument, as in gauges, engine monitors and transmission monitors, so to say? What are you running, Brad?
I opted to, since I was running a GM computer and I didn't really care anything about speedometer because I was running a JK Rubicon case, so I had no speedometer, so that was out of the question. So I ended up opting for a set of autometer gauges, and basically all I have is a tachometer, voltmeter, oil pressure, water temp, fuel gauge, and transmission temp. And what I did is I took the factory gauge cluster, removed all the gauges out of it, completely gutted it, trimmed it to where I could fit gauges inside of it, put a sheet of aluminum in it, bolted it in there, and cut all the holes and everything, and then mounted the gauges onto this factory cluster and bolted it back into the Jeep. And I put some plugs on the back of it, so I just hooked my plugs up, and I can remove the cluster just like a factory cluster would. So it made it pretty streamlined, and it looks good. It's kind of race car-like because it's autometer gauges and aluminum and stuff. So it worked out really good for me. I was really happy with them.
What about you, Bart? What'd you use?
Well, I guess that's when we're getting into the engine management. But as of right now, I've still got just the handheld that comes with the Holley Terminator X. I use that for engine display for all the sensor data, and then I'm running an autometer for my trans temp. And I have that actually mounted on a bracket that I put in the very front of my console that's angled up towards my sight or towards my head. So when I'm driving, I can glance down at the front of my console, and the Terminator X and my autometer for trans temp are side by side right there.
Check that camera real quick.
Yeah, not everyone's fancy like Bradley. Got all that time to sit there and cut holes. And
So yeah, I mean,
but yours is pretty sweet looking. I like it.
yeah. So there's so much free time that you have when you work at the fire department. Hopefully, it's fun to hear this. Yeah.
I've been on the phone nonstop all afternoon, and then having to get my kids something to eat, stuff like that. It's been a busy day for me, so I don't ever slow down.
So it's actually crazy because, not only did I build that cluster at the fire department when I was supposed to, be on standby, hanging out and stuff, or watching TV or whatever, but I not only built the cluster, I stripped down a factory harness and reloomed it and soldered in a fuse block to it. I did all of that at work because I have other things I could be doing, but I had nothing else to do. So I literally was working on LS swapping a Jeep at the fire department. It was pretty cool.
So we can thank the Tennessee taxpayers.
Yes. Don't worry. I got all of my training hours for the month. Every month. Gotta get 20 of them. Get them every month, so I'm good.
Which I like the way your setup was, so I done about the same thing. I had a set of autometers that I'd got from another guy that done LS swap, and he went to a Holley management system, and ended up being the gauges were they were the 3.5 for the speedometer and the 2 5/16 gauges, the small ones, and I couldn't make them work in my dash, so I sold those and bought Glow Shift, which ended up being a pretty nice set of gauges, and cut all mine out and formed them into the dash as well.
The Glow Shift gauges that he got are like LS swap specific, and was your autometer gauges the same way?
No. And there was a couple things I did have to get. I had to buy an adapter because all the autometer stuff, if it's like pressure or temperature gauges, it's all, I think, 1/8 MPT.
Okay.
And I believe I had to buy an adapter for coolant temp, and I had to buy an adapter for
probably oil pressure.
Oil pressure, yeah. I had to buy an adapter for both of them because they're metric fittings. Yeah. So I had to buy an adapter for both of them to adapt it to 1/8 inch MPT. And I used the other hole on I guess it's the passenger side cylinder head, or whichever one you just have hooked up to the factory.
Passenger side.
So yeah, I have my autometer hooked up to the passenger side head.
That's one thing I did like about the Glow Shift. Their oil temperature sensor is just
oil pressure.
Oil pressure sensor. Well, it was the same pigtail as a factory GM oil pressure sensor, which I used their sensor because it was new and it goes with the harness and everything. But I think you still could use a factory GM with the setup that I've got.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure with the 97 Plus stuff, there's a company that makes that gauge panel, like a blank gauge panel for your dash, isn't there?
Autometer specific. So when I bought the Glow Shift, which I had to spend another $700 on autometer if I wanted to, for them to mount in that autometer panel for the 97 Plus. So I bought the Glow Shifts thinking, I thought I'd done the measurements right, but ended up the speedometer and tach was a little bit bigger. It wasn't a 2.5, it was like a 2 5/16. So they wouldn't go side by side in them. So what I ended up having to do is pretty much change the whole face, but I still used the body itself to mount everything in. Was a piece of sheet metal and about 2 things that epoxy JB Weld has glued that thing in.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's on the backside, you can't see it.
Yeah, race car.
Race car.
Well, I am actually still running the factory gauges, and since mine's a 96, none of the information for the gauges came from the PCM. So I was able to adapt everything to work with the LS, and I have everything working except for the tach. And from what I've researched, the same Dakota digital box that I'm using for my vehicle speed sensor to feed vehicle speed sensor to the PCM can also convert the GM tach signal to the tach signal I need for my instrument cluster. I just haven't taken the time to dig into it, wire it up, and try to make it work because it's usually somewhere between idle and rev limiter. So, of all the gauges, not that I really needed a speedometer, but that was easy enough to make work.
It's cool to see everything factory in that thing.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. Looks awesome.
Yeah, if I ever wanted to take it back to stock, I probably still could.
I guess being mine's an 87 Comanche, we swapped a 97 dash into it. It's the reason why we're doing the 97 autometer. And there was something I was going to say to him. I guess I didn't. I opted out of the speedometer because I couldn't make the 2 fit, so I wasn't worried about how fast I was going in the woods.
Yeah, and I mean, Usually I'm not. I'm the same way. I'm not really ever worried about speed. Mine rarely ever sees the road except to run up to the Dollar General or something like that. So it didn't make a difference to me.
But the one cool thing about the glow shift ones is I can run, being that I'm running that doubler, I couldn't adapt something to run a speedometer in mine, but the
Technically, you could.
I mean, yeah, I could, but I mean, how much would you have to go through? But the glow shift,
GPS ones now.
well, that's what I was gonna say. My glow shift come with a GPS decoder, so and my speedometer will work. But like I said, I didn't have room for it, so I just left it out.
Well, that was my initial plan when I did mine, was to ditch the factory gauges, and I was just going to build like a panel and put like a mini tablet in there, like an iPad mini, and run that Autometer OBD2 Bluetooth gauge set. And everything would have worked except for whatever reason, that thing doesn't do GPS speedometer.
Really?
Yeah.
Something that has GPS built into it.
Doesn't have a GPS speedometer.
Yeah.
Because that thing was kind of cool looking, and I've seen dashes done where they're super clean. You have like a charger built in, so you kind of covered in like suede or whatever, and then you just snap the iPad into it, and it's plugged into a charger that's wired into like an accessory on power supply, so it would always stay charged, and you could change what the gauges look like and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this would be pretty cool. But
Heaven forbid.
well, I have a speedometer now, so I feel like I'd be taking a step backwards at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
The street drives are junk anyway, so.
Yeah.
Right, there's people that don't even have brake lights on the trails, and you got a speedometer. I mean, you're fancy.
Hey, if I had $1 for every time somebody's radio would be like, how fast we going?
That means we're doing something stupid then.
Yeah, I'd say we're at Windrock then. That's the only way.
Yeah, full hydro on 43s going down the highway. Hey, how fast we going?
I guess
I guess that's a good segue into engine management, since we're already kind of talking about wiring and stuff like that. Let's go ahead and hear Bart's experience with his Terminator X.
All right, so I guess I start out with, I bought a unfinished TJ project, 5.3. This is where I got the headers from, and the cam. It also came with Terminator X, fuel cell, a bunch of good stuff. It came with a set of tons, which are now underneath our dad's Jeep. And I had really, really high hopes for this Terminator X. And it's a great system as far as install. It's easy, very little wiring to hook up. It gives you your option for your cooling fans, your fuel pump, the relay, and everything is wired in. All you got to do is hook up your one wire that goes to your fuel pump for power. Setup wizard, pretty neat how you can go through and pick, because of course it does, if I'm not mistaken, it does 4 and 8 cylinder engines. And you can set up based on camshafts, your displacement, so like if in your case, Jonathan, if it was a 5.3, you went to 5.7, you could change your, all that over. They advertise this system as a plug-and-play self-learning system. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Off the get-go, we had a problem even getting it to fire up and run. Come to find out that they basically overfuel it in their initial startup so you don't lean it out and I guess scatter the engine. So after speaking with some people and had the help of a neighbor, we found out that off the get-go you have to remove 25% off your complete fuel map to even make it run, or run right and accept throttle.
And is that something that you, so to make tuning changes on that, is that something you do through your display, or do you have to hook up a laptop and have?
You can do I don't have that much experience with it, but with the experience I have with it, you can do everything in the 3.5 handheld. But it's a lot easier to download Holley software, and I don't know what the little cable costs. They call it a CAN bus. It's a USB to your laptop and goes to the actual controller. And it's a real neat setup on their software and how you can actually tune it live, watch it live. You can look at your fuel map, watch what cells it's in, how it's changing, how it's pulling fuel, how it's adding fuel. So all that, as far as tuning it, is a pretty neat setup as far as how that works.
But if somebody was doing a swap and they were planning on using that, you would have to have a tuner that knows that system, right? Like you couldn't, if somebody only tunes with HP tuners, then they're not going to be able to do that.
There's, like in my case, I have HP tuners. My experience with HP tuners isn't just all that great, but I can still mess around with a little bit and create a little more horsepower, especially like on the GMs, mess with power enrichment and things like that. But as far as like the Holley, from what I could tell, since there's a spec set up for speed density, and I think if I'm not mistaken, you can swap it back over to a mass airflow system if you want to with Holley.
Okay.
But it's set for speed density, so all their values are different than what someone would be used to with HP tuners if they're inexperienced.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I can go ahead and say that I'm inexperienced. So, I did have the help, of the neighbor, and also after we got it up and running enough to take throttle and actually move, we did have a tuner that's in a West Tennessee area, which is close to us, and he did do a remote tune on it to get it dialed in. I wasn't on the phone with him while he was connected on the remote laptop. My neighbor was. And so I could see some of the stuff that was going on the laptop as he was making changes. And I remember seeing one of the values for timing versus this value. And there was nothing there as far as that timing for those values. So that goes back to the Terminator X is a system that, I'd almost want to say that even on startup, you need to have, before you even have it started up and you go through the setup wizard, someone needs to go through and start checking some of those values to make some of that timing's right, some of your fueling's right, and things like that. Because there wasn't much on mine. It made, on the initial setup wizard, it would fire up. That's all you got. If
So
you
essentially,
gave it throttle,
you still needed a startup tune, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that is it for part 1 of the LS Swap Talk Tech video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for parts 2, 3, and the Q&A. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more stuff like this, leave a comment below. We definitely have plenty to talk about and no shortage of people to talk to. Thanks for watching, guys, and maybe one day we'll see you out on the trail. Peace.
You fix a fly away?
Bradley, you're looking kind of thick there, ain't you?
Camera adds, what is it, 20 pounds?
Yeah. They're gonna kick you out of that calendar. You keep on.
Man, that'd be trash.